Hey guys, tonight we're headed somewhere warm. Desert warm with the soft hiss of Saharan winds and the distant sound of camel hooves padding through golden dunes. But don't worry, you're not walking. You're lounging atop a velvet saddle, gently swaying as we travel through the golden age of one of the richest humans to ever exist. No, not a tech billionaire or oil tycoon. We're talking gold. Actual gold bars, gold dust, gold on the curtains. And you're going to fall asleep just as he was born, surrounded by goats. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge barefoot through the dry grasslands of 13th century West Africa. The sun is heavy in the sky, and the scent of wood smoke and fresh dung drifts through the air. Yeah, it's not glamorous yet. You're in the Mali Empire, though the word empire might be stretching it for now. Small villages dot the landscape, and each is ruled by local chiefs, warlords, or those who simply own more goats than everyone else. In one of those villages, a baby is born, crying, wrinkled, and entirely unaware that he'll one day break global economies just by going on a long walk. His name? That's still up for debate. Some say Musa Keita, others just call him Mansa Musa, but that title, Mansa, comes later. For now, he's just a kid dodging chickens and getting dust in his mouth every time the wind picks up. Historians still argue whether he was born in Niani or Kangaba, two important towns in medieval Mali. What's clear is that he grew up hearing stories of Sundiata Keita, the legendary Lion King of Mali. Yes, real Lion King vibes, who founded the empire about 100 years earlier. You probably won't survive long in this version of Africa without allies, so young Musa learns early to listen more than talk, smile politely, and share his millet porridge. By the time he's 10, he can tell the difference between good goats and troublemaking ones. At 12, he's helping local elders with trade, salt, cola nuts, maybe a little gold dust wrapped in leather pouches. The Sahel isn't exactly brimming with luxury, but it hums with exchange. Caravans from the north bring Saharan salt and books written in Arabic. Traders from the south carry ivory, spices, and more stories than you can remember. You listen. You always listen. At night, the stars stretch wide above you. No city lights to compete, just that deep cosmic blackness. You lie back on a mat outside the family hut, the smell of roasted yams clinging to your fingers, and wonder what's beyond those stars, or more realistically, what's beyond the Niger River. One day a storyteller arrives from far away, his robes dusty, his face carved with deep laugh lines. He tells tales of vast cities of stone, of oceans without end, and of rulers so wealthy they sleep on silk. You're skeptical but curious, and when he mentions gold mines in the south that sparkle like the sun cracked open the ground, something in you stirs. You want to see it. You want to build something, not yet a palace, but maybe a big house with windows. Meanwhile, Mali is growing, slowly, like a tree that just keeps reaching. The gold trade strengthens its grip on the region, and Islam begins to filter in through scholars and merchants from the north. You hear Arabic for the first time and think it sounds like water flowing over smooth stones. You try mimicking it later while feeding goats. The goats are unimpressed. By your late teens, you've become the kind of young man elders nod at. Responsible, calm, good with numbers. You don't steal, you don't gossip, and you somehow always find the best route between villages. People start asking for your help in disputes, not because you're loud, but because you're unshakable. That kind of boring wisdom earns you respect in Mali. Quirky side note, there's a story passed down that in your village, people believed sleeping facing the west brought dreams of distant lands. You tried it, you dreamt of gold. Not metaphorically, actual rivers of gold flowing slowly, like honey in the sun. Of course, you wake up with a goat chewing your sleeve, but the dream sticks. Then everything changes. The king, the Mansa of Mali, is planning something strange. Some say he's building ships. Others whisper about him sending men across the ocean to find the other side. Historians still debate this one fiercely. Did Mansa Abu Bakr II really launch a transatlantic voyage around 1311? Some believe he did, and that he never came back. Which makes room for someone else to rise. You. Suddenly, you're summoned. Not in a fancy way, just a messenger, a scroll, and a hasty ride. The elders and nobles gather, murmuring. There's tension in the air. Then someone says it aloud. You are now the Mansa of Mali. You blink. A goat sneezes behind you. Somewhere in the distance, the griots, the oral historians, start preparing their drums. And just like that, a boy raised among goats and millet porridge now holds the keys to the gold mines of Bambouk and Bure. You're 25, give or take, and you just inherited the wealth of a continent. Sleepy yet? You sit very still. There's something about being handed an empire that makes your spine straighten and your hands go suddenly very, very quiet. A few heartbeats ago, you were organizing grain storage and haggling over salt bricks. Now people are bowing. There's a man fanning you with palm leaves. There's another trying to fit you for ceremonial sandals. You didn't even know ceremonial sandals were a thing. Your cousin, Abu Bakr II, the would-be ocean adventurer, has vanished, swallowed by the Atlantic and by history itself. Maybe he made it to the Americas, maybe he didn't. Historians still argue whether his voyage even happened, or if it's just an epic ghost tale whispered by griots around smoky fires. Either way, he's gone. And you're in charge now. There's no grand coronation stage. You stand under a wide baobab tree as elders chant your lineage. The bark peels like parchment, rough and cracked, just like the empire you've inherited. Mali is massive but fragmented. Cities like Niani, Timbuktu, and Gao dot the landscape, tethered together by trade and tribal politics more than loyalty. There are rebellions in the south, bandits on the trade routes. And your treasury? Overflowing, like laughably full. You could use gold bars as building blocks for furniture if you wanted. Some say you do. But you don't want to rule like a warlord. That's not your style. You don't bark commands or ride around in heavy armor yelling at people. You do something much sneakier. You listen. You invite local leaders from all corners of the empire to Niani, your capital. There's no throne, just woven mats and bowls of spicy groundnut stew. You speak softly and ask careful questions. How are the crops? How fair are the tax collectors? Where are the bandits hiding this month? And little by little, people start trusting you. Because you don't just rule, you manage. At night you walk the courtyards, fingers trailing along carved stone, mind heavy with maps and markets. You're not a flashy king, but you're the kind who notices when a servant limps or when the moonlight changes the shape of the riverbanks. Meanwhile, the world around you grows louder. Cairo thrives to the northeast, Baghdad sparkles farther east, and Europe is fumbling through feudalism and early Renaissance hiccups. You get news in bits and whispers, wars in Spain, new popes in Rome, traders in Genoa selling sugar like it's magic dust. You yawn. You're busy managing gold mines. Now, about that gold. You've got access to some of the richest veins in the known world. Mali's gold doesn't glitter, it glows. Dusty yellow, powdered into pouches, molded into nuggets the size of your knuckles. It comes from the Bambouk region, from rivers where children pan for flakes while singing. It travels by camel through vast deserts, traded for salt, silk, books, and occasionally very confused peacocks. And here's a fun fringe fact. In Mali, salt was sometimes worth more than gold, literal salt. The kind that melts into your stew. Why? Because it preserved food, replenished sweat, and kept you alive in the scorching sun. Your salt slabs are cut like bricks, stacked like library books, and carried hundreds of miles. If you dropped one on your foot, you'd cry for days. So, you've got a nation that runs on gold, salt, and careful diplomacy. You're not just rich, you're empire rich. Jeff Bezos in a tunic rich. But unlike modern billionaires who send rockets into space, you have a different obsession. Mecca. As a devout Muslim, you know the pilgrimage, Hajj, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. Every capable Muslim should make the journey at least once in their lifetime, and you're more than capable. You're downright overqualified. So, one hot afternoon, you lean back on your embroidered cushions and declare, I think I'll go to Mecca. Now this isn't a spontaneous road trip. It's not you in a robe with a map, muttering, "Is it left at the Red Sea or right?" No, no. This is a production. You begin planning, not for a few camels and a backpack, for tens of thousands of people. Servants, scholars, soldiers, translators, merchants, cooks, water carriers, fan bearers, and gold porters. Yes, gold porters. That's a real job title now. You assign a whole squad to carry nothing but gold, dust, bars, and coins on the backs of camels so sleek they look like runway models. Historians estimate you bring 60,000 people. That's more than many medieval cities even had. And 100 camels, each loaded with 300 pounds of gold, which makes you, functionally, a walking, talking economic time bomb. There's a joke among your attendants that if you sneeze too hard, you might accidentally launch another city's economy. But planning a caravan isn't just about logistics. It's about reputation. You want the Muslim world to know that Mali exists, that it's learned, devout, and not so quietly richer than anyone else on the continent. You hire architects to sketch a royal tent complex. You design uniforms for your guards, flowing white robes with gold trim. You order extra sandal repairs, because walking across the Sahara eats through shoes faster than termites through a scroll. And for entertainment, griots, always griots. Their instruments are soft and stringed, their stories winding and hypnotic. One night, sitting near a fire crackling under a dome of stars, you whisper to your advisor, "Let's not just go to Mecca, let's change Mecca. It's ambitious. It's maybe even a little ridiculous. But hey, you're Mansa Musa now. You've got a pillow embroidered with your own name. You sleep well. You dream in gold. And as dawn rises, the caravan starts to move. The morning air hangs heavy with the scent of camel sweat, dust, and date paste. The drums have been playing since dawn, slow, repetitive, a beat meant not to rouse, but to pace. You sit atop a camel higher than your childhood roof back in Niani. Its saddle is padded in velvet and stitched with gold thread, though it still manages to creak in the most untrustworthy way every time it shifts. The journey to Mecca has begun. You are not traveling quietly. The caravan stretches as far as the eye can see, undulating over dunes like a caravan of moving sandcastles. There are guards at the front, scouts flanking the sides, and somewhere near the middle, right where the food is safest, you. Beside you are griots humming old songs of Sundiata, clerics reciting Quranic verses with musical cadence, and gold porters, lots of them. The gold shines even under wraps, hidden in carved boxes, nestled in woolen sacks sewn into cloaks. You're not just wealthy, you're audibly wealthy. When you ride by, people can hear the coins clink in rhythm with your camel's stride, and you've barely even left Mali. As the days pass, the landscape morphs. From the fertile floodplains of the Niger to the pale, cracked crust of the Sahara. The nights get colder. The days become endless. You learn the slow math of patience, how to ration water, how to read stars, and how to stay still when the wind blows sand like tiny needles. At night, your advisors pitch royal tents thick with tapestries, but even the velvet can't keep out the desert chill that sneaks in like gossip. Then there's the noise. Even sleep doesn't come quietly. You lie in your tent, listening to someone 2 camels over, arguing about dried fish, while another sings softly to his donkey. The donkey does not appreciate it. A few weeks in, you reach the edge of the Sahara. A town called Walata greets you with cautious celebration. People line the roads, eyes wide. You hand out gold, casually, like it's candy at a school play. A nugget here, a purse of dust there. The town cheers. Children chase the camels. Merchants weep tears of economic confusion. You're still just warming up. From Walata, the caravan snakes north, finally hitting the heart of the desert. Now comes the hard part, the real Sahara. Imagine riding for days with nothing but sand, heat mirages, and the occasional skeleton of a dried-up caravan as your scenery. You squint at the horizon, unsure if the thing ahead is a palm tree or a camel having an existential crisis. The sun doesn't rise. It attacks, and your only shade comes from shadows you invent in your mind. But here's the thing. Your people trust you. Despite the grumbling, despite the blisters, Despite that one guy who keeps tripping over his own robe, they follow you. Because you make them feel like this isn't madness, it's mission. A golden mission, yes, but still sacred. At every oasis you rest for days. You replenish your water stores, trade salt and ivory for dates and perfume. You talk to local chiefs, make friends, write letters in Arabic so elegant they look like rain dancing on the page. Your entourage includes translators fluent in Arabic, Berber, Mande, and even Songhai dialects. You're not just passing through, you're learning as you go. And now, you approach Cairo. You've heard of Cairo all your life. The city of scholars, spice markets, and mosques tall enough to scratch heaven's ankles. It is the gateway to the Islamic world, and you're about to enter it riding high on a camel that probably hates its job. Historians estimate it's around the year 1324. Cairo is ruled by Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad. He's powerful, polished, and completely unprepared for you. You enter like a meteor made of money. Your people flood the streets. Your guards form protective rings. And you? You descend from your camel in robes so rich they'd make peacocks feel underdressed. You walk through the markets, toss coins to beggars, commission mosques on a whim, and fund schools you'll never attend. You distribute gold like it's sand. You are vibing. But here's where it gets awkward. You cause inflation, not metaphorically, literally. You spend so much gold in Cairo, buying goods, tipping workers, donating to mosques, that you accidentally tank the local economy. Gold becomes so common, its value plummets. Bread prices skyrocket. Merchants get rich, then get poor, then confused. A Spanish traveler later writes that Cairo took over a decade to financially recover from your generosity. You shrug. You were just trying to be polite. Now let's talk fringe details. Legend says that one of your favorite gifts to leave behind was gold dust, woven into embroidered fans. No one really knows if this is true, but Cairo's tailors definitely noticed a spike in slightly crunchy fabrics after your visit. As you move deeper into the city, Sultan al-Nasir insists on meeting you. Protocol suggests you should approach him first, out of respect. You refuse, not rudely, just regally. Eventually, he comes to you, and when he does, you bow, deeply, respectfully, but with just enough flair to remind everyone that your camel eats better than most nobles. You two talk, about faith, about trade, about your journey. Historians still debate the details of that conversation. Some say it was cordial, others claim it was tense. But one thing's for sure. By the time you leave Cairo, everyone knows Mali. The merchants are whispering your name, the scholars are writing it, and cartographers. They start drawing you on the map, not just your empire, you. Next stop, Mecca. But first, a nap, a long one, beneath a tent that smells faintly of myrrh and roasted dates. You wake up to the distant hum of prayer calls, the scent of cardamom-laced coffee curling through the morning air. Cairo fades behind you like a dream half-remembered, heavy with gold and laughter. The Nile is now a memory, and ahead lies the holy heart of Islam, Mecca. But you're not in a hurry. You're Mansa Musa. You don't rush, you glide. The road to Mecca from Cairo winds along the Red Sea, past the towns of Upper Egypt, and through narrow valleys. You cross paths with other pilgrims, some poor, some princely, but none quite like your golden parade. Wherever you stop, people gather. Not just to gawk, though there's plenty of that, but to learn. You speak softly. You fund repairs to mosques. You sponsor meals. And everywhere you go, you ask questions, like, where can I find the most learned scholars? Who's the best architect around? Which scribe writes like the Quran sings? You're not just here to worship. You're here to recruit. By now, word has spread ahead of you. In every small town, people whisper, he's coming. The King of Gold. Some are skeptical, others think you're a mirage. But when your caravan arrives, draped in silk, guarded by shimmering spears, and trailing a soft dust cloud like incense, they believe. And when you finally reach Mecca, it's like stepping into a story you've heard since childhood. The city is carved from faith itself, stone walls warmed by centuries of prayer, merchants shouting over bundles of dates and bolts of cloth, pilgrims from every corner of the known world, Persians, Turks, Somalis, Andalusians, each with their own languages, clothes, customs. And now you, a ruler from the edge of the Sahara, standing humbly among thousands. You walk the same dusty paths as the Prophet Muhammad once did. You circle the Kaaba in reverence, not robes. You touch the sacred stone with calloused fingers that once gripped reins, gold and scrolls. You pray, not as Mansa Musa the monarch, but as one man among millions. In this moment, you're not an emperor. You're just a servant of God. But of course, you are Mansa Musa. And Mecca notices. You donate generously, again. You fund water wells, commission Quranic schools, even sponsor students who want to study in Timbuktu. You meet scholars whose wisdom makes you pause mid-breath. One, a quiet teacher with a gray beard and a missing thumb, explains celestial navigation using only a date pit and a stick. You invite him to come home with you. He agrees, but only if he can bring his books. You smile. You were hoping he would. Then there's the architect. In Mecca, someone whispers of a man from Al-Andalus, a region in Muslim Spain, known for its stunning buildings and dazzling mosaics. His name is Abu Ishaq al-Sahili. He's not just a builder, he's a poet, a mathematician, an artist with mortar and marble. You arrange a meeting. He arrives dressed simply, but his mind is anything but. You talk geometry, arches, the color of prayer halls at sunrise. You invite him to Mali. He hesitates, so you casually offer him 200 kilograms of gold. He accepts. You spend weeks in Mecca, drifting between prayer, learning, and quiet reflection. You notice how faith connects traders and shepherds, kings and beggars. Islam becomes more than obligation. It becomes your compass. Not just for belief, but for governing. You begin to imagine what Mali could become, a center of not just wealth, but wisdom. And somewhere between prayer and poetry, you realize you've changed. You came to Mecca with a kingdom behind you. You leave it with a vision ahead. The return journey begins not with trumpets, but with quiet resolve. Your caravan is different now, slimmer, smarter. Some of the guards have returned home, some scholars have joined. The camels, still grumpy, but they carry new cargo now, manuscripts, ink, calligraphy tools, blueprints, and questions. Always questions. You pass through Medina, reverently visiting the Prophet's mosque. You travel the Red Sea route again, but slower, stopping longer, listening more. You make deals with merchants, offering Mali's gold for books and ideas instead of spices and cloth. A few traders raise eyebrows, confused. Who trades gold for books? You do. You're building something more permanent than palaces. One quirky detail. Somewhere along the return, you buy a giant drum, so large it needs its own camel. You claim it's for ceremony, but really, you just like the sound. It becomes the heartbeat of your caravan, a deep, lazy thump that echoes across sand dunes like the earth sighing in its sleep. And as you near Mali once more, you pause on a hill overlooking the plains of your homeland. It's green and gold under the afternoon sun. Niani is just a day's ride away. The scent of acacia trees hangs in the air, and you can already hear the griots tuning their choras, preparing the songs they'll sing about your journey. They'll mention the gold, of course, but the real treasure is still unpacked. You cross the border into Mali as the dry wind softens and the earth takes on that familiar reddish glow. The camels grunt with relief. The porters cheer weakly, some from joy, others because someone promised mangoes. And you just smile, quietly. It's the same land, but you've changed. Niani welcomes you with noise. Trumpets, drums, screaming children, scribes scribbling. Griots already halfway through new songs before you even dismount. There's roasted meat, fresh yams, sweetened milk, and more questions than one man should ever be asked. Did you meet the Sultan? Is Mecca made of gold? Why does your architect keep measuring everyone's doors? You do your best to answer with grace, but truthfully, your mind is elsewhere. While everyone celebrates the gold you gave away, you're thinking about the knowledge you brought back. Books, scholars, blueprints, ideas. It's time to get to work. You meet with your advisors in the cool shade of your stone palace. The walls are smooth but bare. That's about to change. You call for Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, the Andalusian architect you picked up like an expensive souvenir. He arrives with parchment, sketches, and a slightly annoyed look that suggests he's already mentally redesigning your capital. You give him one simple directive: build a place where learning feels like prayer. And so, the real legacy begins. The first project, the Jingwareber Mosque in Timbuktu. It's not just a place of worship, it's a beacon. Al-Sahili uses limestone, clay, and local timber, fusing Saharan practicality with Moorish elegance. Mud brick walls rise from the desert like sacred sandcastles. Wooden beams stick out in rhythm, not just for structure but to aid future repairs. You think ahead like that. Somewhere scholars still debate whether Al-Sahili really designed the mosque himself or just guided local masons. But either way, it's built, and it's breathtaking. Timbuktu, already a trade hub, now begins to pulse with new energy. You encourage scholars from across North Africa to settle there. You send word to Cairo, Mecca, even Baghdad. Come teach in Mali. We have students, stipends, and shade. And they come. You fund the construction of madrasas, Islamic schools that teach not just religion, but astronomy, law, grammar, medicine, even poetry. One of them, Sankore University, becomes so large it eventually houses over 25,000 students and hundreds of thousands of manuscripts. Not bad for a town with more goats than books just a generation ago. Here's a fun fringe tidbit. Local legend claims that some students were so devoted they tied their books to their robes so they could study while walking. Which, honestly, feels like something you'd do if you'd invented textbooks and cardio in the same afternoon. Meanwhile, in Niani, you streamline the bureaucracy. You organize the empire into provinces, each ruled by a governor loyal to you. You improve tax collection, but not cruelly. You're more interested in order than oppression. After all, gold flows best when it's not constantly being stolen or buried in a panic. And you build more. Mosques in every major city, public wells, bridges, caravanserais, inns where traders rest, eat, and sometimes gossip so loudly you have to remind them you can still hear things across the empire. And of course, you support the arts. Griots become state-sponsored. Storytelling becomes a civic duty. You declare that history must be remembered, not just in books, but in songs, dances, and whispered prayers. You even fund the copying of manuscripts. You hire scribes who can write in both Arabic and native Mande languages. Pages of wisdom from Cairo and Cordoba now live on the soft, thin hides of West African parchment. At night, you sit in your garden, surrounded by citrus trees and lazy lanterns. You sip honeyed tea while a scholar explains the movement of stars. You're not sure you follow all of it, but you love the sound of it, the poetry hidden in science. Once in a while you'll walk through Timbuktu's market in disguise just to hear what people say. Spoiler, mostly good things. Except for one old man who's still annoyed about the price of dates. You send him a basket of the best ones the next day. And let's not forget the architecture boom. Some towns try to outdo each other. One mayor builds a minaret taller than his house. Another one carves a Quranic verse into his doorway. The empire buzzes with ambition, but in a sleepy, sun-drenched way. There's no mad rush, just the slow, steady bloom of culture. Of course, you still have to rule. There are border skirmishes, traders arguing over routes, young princes eyeing the throne a little too hungrily. But you handle it all with that trademark Musa calm. You hold court not with swords, but with scrolls. You consult scholars before deciding justice. You remind everyone that Mali's strength isn't in how loudly it yells, but in how wisely it listens. Still, you never forget your roots. Sometimes you visit villages without fanfare. You sit with elders, eat millet cakes, listen to gossip about a new midwife or a stubborn donkey. You laugh, you rest. You remember that you once dreamed of this, back when your only wealth was a well-behaved goat. And just like that, years pass. Mali transforms from a wealthy empire into an intellectual powerhouse. Its borders stretch farther. Its name is written in foreign tongues. Its king, you, becomes the benchmark for wealth, wisdom, and weirdly good camel management. But this is only the middle of your story. You rise with the sun, as you always do, though now your joints protest a little more than they used to. A life of golden responsibility will do that. But the empire doesn't slow, so neither do you. Today, you're preparing something grand, something absurdly, gloriously large. The caravan of all caravans. You're not heading back to Mecca. Been there, done that, accidentally wrecked the economy. No, this is something more domestic, but no less ambitious. A royal inspection of the empire, from Niani to Timbuktu, from the gold mines of Bambouk to the salt pits of Tagaza. Why? Because the empire has grown fat and full. The borders stretch farther than most people can mentally picture. And if you don't occasionally show your face, people start inventing what it looks like. Some say you're made of solid gold. Others claim your beard glows in the moonlight. One persistent rumor insists your camel has its own camel, like a backup ride. So once again, the drums begin. Your attendants pack weeks' worth of supplies, embroidered tents, woolen carpets, water skins filled with tamarind juice, and scrolls for entertainment. Because what's a road trip without some light reading on Islamic law? You ride in the center, of course, under a canopy of dyed silk. The camels are dressed better than most diplomats. Even the horses wear jewelry. And the people? Thousands. Scholars, servants, cooks, merchants, musicians. The caravan looks less like a military expedition and more like a traveling university married a luxury bazaar and had a very chatty baby. One fun fact. You insist that every stop the caravan makes includes time for education. You host open-air lectures where griots and imams sit side by side explaining astronomy and storytelling techniques. You encourage debate. You even chime in, once hilariously confusing a unit of Islamic jurisprudence with a kitchen utensil. You laugh louder than anyone. As you travel, the roads turn into slow parades. Children chase the animals, hoping to spot the famous gold camels. Women wave from rooftops. Drummers pound rhythms that echo into the night. You give away gifts like it's always Eid, fine fabrics, copper tools, even cows. You bless marriages, solve local disputes, and reward a 10-year-old boy in Jen for memorizing the Quran by giving his family a herd of goats. The goats are not impressed. In the salt town of Tagaza, you hold your nose and marvel at the crumbling blocks of salty white that hold up entire homes. It smells like brine and camel feet, but it's vital. The salt trade is Mali's lifeblood, equal in value to your gold. You meet with Berber merchants, share mint tea, and make quiet agreements sealed with handshakes and the soft clinking of golden rings. Then Timbuktu. Your return is met like the arrival of a prophet. The city has grown in your absence. New scholars have arrived, drawn by your stipends. The Sankora Madrasa now buzzes with more than 25,000 students, its courtyard shaded by broad canopies, its shelves groaning with thousands of manuscripts, legal texts, astronomical charts, even a surprisingly heated debate about whether sleep is a spiritual state. You think, yes. You climb to the minaret of Jingereber Mosque and look out. The Niger River glimmers in the distance. The city hums like a book whispered into existence. You take a moment to breathe. You've built something that might just outlive you. Still, not everything goes smoothly. In one province, a local governor has started skimming taxes. You hear of it through a servant's servant who thought you wouldn't care. You do. You remove the governor, publicly, but without drama. You replace him with a former salt merchant, an honest man who once gave you directions when you were lost in his market. Historians still argue whether this was wisdom or pettiness. You call it leadership. On another stop, your architect Al-Sahili presents you with plans for a new caravanserai, this one shaped like a crescent moon. You admire the design, but suggest adding a fountain in the center. For tired feet, you say. He rolls his eyes and draws it in. The two of you have developed the gentle bickering of an old married couple, except your love language is infrastructure. By now, foreign traders have caught on. Caravans arrive from North Africa, bringing glassware, textiles, even Venetian mirrors. You hear of Christian merchants who ask if they can sell goods in Mali. You say yes, but insist they learn a few Islamic phrases, just to be polite. Your open-door policy isn't universal, though. You keep a tight grip on Mali's gold exports. You've seen what happens when too much leaks out. You want gold to remain valuable, not end up as decoration on every passing donkey cart. Here's a weird little fringe detail. You once received a delegation from the Mamluk Sultanate, bearing exotic birds and embroidered banners. One of the birds, a kind of desert peacock, takes a liking to your sandals and follows you around for weeks. The court starts calling it Musa's shadow. You pretend to hate it. You secretly feed it melon rinds. By the time you finish your inspection tour, you've covered thousands of miles. Your empire feels smaller now, more connected. You've seen its corners, its cracks, its songs and silences. And so you return, not tired but satisfied. You hang your dusty robes. You thank your advisors. You check in with the griots who are already turning this journey into legend. And one night, as the stars rise over Niani, you walk the gardens alone. The citrus trees bloom. The frogs sing lazily. You sit on a carved stone bench and breathe in the scent of earth, jasmine, and a little camel hair. You've ruled not by fear, not by sword, but by rhythm, by gold, by patience. And maybe, just maybe, by listening more than you spoke. The nights in Niani have grown cooler, softer. You walk more slowly now, not out of weakness, but in appreciation. Each step feels like a conversation with the ground, an exchange of weight, wisdom, and time. You are no longer a rising star. You are the moon, steady, glowing, not in a hurry. But your mind never stops. You begin to think beyond your reign. You've built cities, mosques, schools. But will they endure without you? You know the desert forgets. Sand swallows roads, floods erase names. Even memory itself can be lazy. So you begin your next quiet mission. Legacy through learning. You summon scribes and scholars, tasking them with writing Mali's story. Your story. Not in one language, but many. Arabic, Soninke, Fulani, even symbols used by desert traders who count with knots and colors. You create a court of memory, a literal memory council. Every month they gather and recite the latest chronicles, ensuring that no important event falls through the cracks of time. You even pay them extra if they correct one another politely. And then, something unexpected happens. Foreigners start showing up, like lots of them. First, it's the Moroccan traders, curious, eager, and slightly sweaty. Then come emissaries from Cairo, Baghdad, and yes, even Europe. One Italian merchant tries to impress your court by juggling oranges. He's politely escorted back to his camel. But one group does catch your interest, the Catalans. They arrive with a gift, an ornate map. You examine it carefully, tracing the coastline of West Africa with your finger. Then your eyes stop. There it is. A little illustration of you, seated on a golden throne, wearing a crown, holding a nugget of gold the size of a melon. The text underneath reads something like, "This is the richest man in the world." You squint. You murmur. My nose isn't that big. Your court laughs, but the truth sinks in. You've officially become a figure on parchment, a name that strangers in cold places will whisper about for centuries. You commission a dozen copies of the map. One goes to Timbuktu, another to Gao. One is framed in your chamber. You stare at it sometimes when sleep eludes you, not out of vanity, out of wonder. You are both man and myth now. But empires, like camels, get fussy when not groomed. There are murmurs, nothing serious but present. Local chiefs who feel left out of decision-making. Merchants irritated by border tolls. Young scholars frustrated by the pace of reform. You address it all the only way you know how, slowly, kindly, firmly. You invite dissenting voices to your court. You listen before you speak. You tell stories that gently mock arrogance. You remind them that gold flows better when everyone feels included. And speaking of gold, the mines continue to flourish. But now, instead of hoarding it, you reinvest it. You establish endowments for schools. You fund pilgrimages for poor families. You even build an orphanage run by scholars who teach philosophy and baking in equal measure. One quirky program? You sponsor wandering poets. These are griots paid to travel the empire, collecting and retelling local legends. They return with strange tales, villages where goats are elected mayor, tribes who believe rivers can talk, a farmer who claims to have invented a flying gourd. You nod. You love them all. And then, because you just can't help yourself, you begin drafting a library, not a building, a network. You fund a string of mini-libraries along the major trade routes, small shaded rooms where travelers can rest and read. The texts vary. Islamic theology, herbal medicine, camel care, astronomy, love poems. One even includes a joke book written by a blind scholar who claims to be funnier in the dark. Meanwhile, your architect Al-Sahili is still busy. He's older now, crankier, but still brilliant. He surprises you one day with plans for a palace garden designed like a solar calendar. Each section blooms at different times of year, marking solstices and festivals. You ask, what happens if the flowers bloom early? He grumbles, then nature gets the last word. You fund the project immediately. Your court has changed too. The once young advisors now wear silver in their beards. Your scribes have sore wrists. One has developed a dramatic sigh that he uses every time you request an extra copy of anything. And you've started mentoring your successor. You watch him closely, his patience, his questions, the way he tilts his head when listening. You don't rush him. You know the weight of the crown is not in its gold, but in its quiet, in the decisions no one sees. Historians still debate whether your eldest son or a nephew eventually took the throne. But you never cared much for titles. You cared for stewardship. You didn't build an empire to own it. You built it to share. Sometimes in the early morning hours, you walk through the quiet halls of your palace. The air is thick with incense and the faint sound of snoring guards. You pass shelves lined with books you'll never finish, and walls covered in tapestries woven by hands long gone. You pause at the open courtyard. Above you, stars. Below you, the empire. Within you, peace. The empire exhales. That's how it feels now. Less like a machine grinding forward, more like a living, breathing thing that expands and contracts with the seasons. And you, Mansa Musa, are no longer pushing it along. You're guiding it with gentle nudges, like a shepherd with a staff carved from stories. This is the golden era of Mali. Trade routes hum with activity. The Niger River sparkles with boatmen ferrying spices, cloth, salt, and books. Timbuktu's libraries swell, not just with text from afar, but with local manuscripts, philosophers, historians, even poets writing in Mandé and Songhai, their words swirling like smoke in the warm desert air. You encourage them. You fund new dialect dictionaries. You even start a prize for best original parable. The winner one year is a fable about a turtle who outwits a greedy lion by convincing it that gold is edible. You laugh so hard, your advisors think you've finally lost it. But beneath the laughter, there's strategy. You're standardizing knowledge. For the first time, Mali's regions begin to understand each other, not just through trade, but through shared culture. It's subtle, a proverb here, a metaphor there. But it binds the empire tighter than gold ever could. And while the cities buzz, the countryside sings a slower song. You visit villages without your royal retinue now, just you, a guide, and a wide-brimmed hat that makes you look more like a wandering teacher than a ruler. You talk to farmers about irrigation, to women about midwifery practices, to old hunters who insist they once saw a lion with silver eyes. You nod, always nod. You collect their wisdom like beads on a necklace. Then, you bring it back to court. You order scribes to record herbal remedies, recipes, rainfall patterns, and lullabies. A library begins to form, not of empire or theology, but of everyday life. You call it the Book of Ordinary Wonders. Fringe detail? One section is devoted entirely to strange dreams people have had. Your favorite? A fisherman who dreamt of a fish reading aloud from a book of sand. You have no idea what it means, but it makes a good bedtime story. Meanwhile, foreign attention intensifies. Embassies arrive from Egypt, Morocco, and even the distant Ilkhanate of Persia. They come bearing gifts, ceramics, spices, silk scrolls. One delegation brings a mechanical astrolabe, which no one in your court can figure out, but everyone agrees looks very impressive. You place it in the center of your library as a conversation starter. You begin to realize Mali isn't just in the world, it's becoming part of the conversation. Maps across the Mediterranean now include your name. European traders speak of you with a mix of awe and confusion. The king of gold, they whisper, whose camels weep riches, whose cities float on learning. There's a phrase that starts to echo through Cairo, Jerusalem, even Genoa. Timbuktu is where the gold meets the gods. You chuckle when you hear that. You know it's not about divinity, it's about possibility. You've turned a once marginalized region into a center of thought. You've made sand whisper wisdom. But not everyone's a fan. You hear rumors. Some distant nobles mutter that Mali's power is overblown, that it's all gold and no backbone, that without you, the whole thing will collapse. You nod, then you send them books. No threats, just leather-bound volumes of law, trade policy, and astronomy. A subtle message. This is what strength looks like now. And you begin to step back. Not in defeat, but in design. You delegate more. You teach your successors not just the art of rulership, but the rhythm of patience. You show them how to listen to a market, how to watch a court for subtle signs of unrest, how to judge when a gift is more powerful than a decree. There's one moment you remember clearly. Your successor asks, "How will I know I'm ruling well?" And you reply, "When the people forget your name but remember your laws." It's not humility, it's architecture. You've spent decades building a structure meant to stand without you. Still, you're not quite done. You make one final journey, a quiet pilgrimage not to Mecca but to the headwaters of the Niger, a sacred place, the beginning of the river that feeds your empire like a mother's hand. You go alone, except for one guard and one griot. The water is clear, the frogs sing, the trees seem to know your name. You sit beside the river, dip your hands into the current, and whisper a prayer, not for gold, not for glory, but for continuity. You ask the river to carry knowledge downstream forever. The griot beside you doesn't speak. He simply records the moment in his mind. Years later, his grandson will sing about this day as the afternoon the king spoke to water. When you return to Niani, you rest more. Not because you must, but because the empire no longer leans on your shoulders. It stands on its own. In the evenings, you take slow walks through the gardens. You listen to the crickets. You trace constellations with your fingers. You hum songs your mother used to sing, and you begin to write. A letter, a quiet one, addressed to no one in particular. It begins, "To the one who dreams of building something timeless." You tuck it away in a scroll case sealed with wax and faith, not a legacy, a lantern, just in case someone needs the light. You wake one morning with the sun already high and the birds gossiping in the courtyard trees. It's rare, you're usually up before dawn, listening to the first stirrings of the empire. But today, the world has turned a few steps ahead of you. And strangely, it feels okay. You sit beneath a baobab tree, sipping mint tea from a clay cup etched with verses from the Quran. Around you, the palace hums in low gear, servants sweep gently, scribes yawn politely, and somewhere, a griot tests a new melody, half-tuned and entirely too ambitious. You smile. You are older now, not just in body, but in rhythm. Your thoughts move more like the Niger, slow, deep, and winding. You no longer race ahead. You settle in. This is the final chapter of your rule, but endings like rainfall don't come all at once. You begin to notice time in odd places, the worn edge of your favorite prayer mat, the way your sandals don't quite fit like they used to. The hush that falls when you enter a room, not out of fear, but because people don't want to miss a single word. And with this awareness comes a new kind of responsibility, to prepare for absence. So, you begin to quietly withdraw, not from the world, but from the spotlight. You reduce the number of court meetings. You let your heir speak more, decide more. You let scholars argue without always intervening. You laugh at their debates, especially the one about whether fish sleep with their eyes open. They do, you checked. Your architect, Al-Sahili, visits less now. His knees ache. But when he does come, you sit together in silence more than conversation. You both know the empire has taken on a life of its own. You were the hands that shaped it. Now it breathes without prompting. There's still gold, of course. The mines haven't dried. The traders still flow through Mali's arteries. But you find yourself more interested in stories than scales. You ask griots for tales you've never heard. One day, someone brings you a story from the far side of Lake Chad, about a queen who ruled with riddles and invisible ink. You're delighted. You request a song version. It becomes the palace's new favorite lullaby. Fringe detail? You begin collecting odd objects from across the empire. Curved shells, pieces of ancient pottery, a bowl carved entirely from baobab wood. You call them whispers. When asked why, you shrug and say, "They remind me that time speaks in fragments." Your walk becomes slower. You sometimes pause mid-step just to feel the ground beneath you. The sandals, the dust, the grass. It's all been part of your kingdom, and soon it will move without you. You begin to draft a final document. Not a royal decree, not a law, but a letter to Mali itself. It includes no titles, no instructions, just reflections. You write, "An empire is not measured in gold, but in how kindly it treats its strangers. Let the road stay smooth, let the wells stay sweet, let the prayers echo without fear." You seal it and place it in the royal archive with no fanfare. The people notice your fading presence. At first, there's confusion, then understanding. They begin to gather in courtyards and tell stories of the Golden King who gave away more than he kept. Children reenact your journey to Mecca with toy camels and piles of date pits. A young girl writes a poem called "The Sand Wrote His Name." It becomes a favorite in Timbuktu's schools. Historians will later argue about your final years. Some say you retired to a private estate. Others claim you spent your last days walking the riverbanks and feeding stray goats. A few suggest you died on a second pilgrimage. No one agrees entirely, and maybe that's fitting, because legends never really sit still. Even your griots tasked with preserving truth begin to argue over details. Was it 100 camels or 200? Did you actually build the Sankore Madrasa or just fund it? Did you really cause inflation in Cairo? Or was that just economic jealousy? You chuckle at their confusion. You know the facts. But you also know that history is clay in the hands of memory. It stretches, it cracks, it's beautiful, even in its inconsistencies. And so, on one unusually windy afternoon, you take one last walk through your garden. The citrus blossoms are heavy with fragrance. The fountain bubbles lazily. A peacock, not the same one but close, struts nearby, tail half fanned, pretending it's more important than it is. You pause beneath the tree you planted after returning from Mecca. Its shade reaches farther than you expected. You sit down, not to rule, not to think, just to be. And in that quiet space between heartbeat and breeze, you feel something profound. You've done enough. You close your eyes, not forever, just for a little while. And the empire, bathed in the gold of dusk, keeps breathing. The palace hums without you. It's a gentle, rhythmic hum, like bees in distant lavender, or footsteps padding across polished stone. You're still there, of course, but now mostly in echoes, in old instructions repeated by younger voices, in maps spread across tables drawn from memory you once shared, in lanterns lit at dusk without needing to be told. Your successor has taken the reins. A little nervously at first, like a rider testing a young horse. But you've prepared him well. You trained him not just in policy and prayer, but in patience. You taught him how to wait before answering, how to listen twice before speaking. Still, it's not easy watching from the sidelines. You resist the urge to interfere when a tax policy feels too ambitious, when a courtier speaks too quickly, when a scholar forgets to cite an old verse properly. Instead, you smile faintly, take a sip of date juice, and remind yourself, this too is part of letting go. You spend your mornings now reading, not royal reports but poetry. verses from Persia, Moorish tales, even local riddles. One of your favorites begins, "The sun asks nothing from the soil, yet still the flowers rise." You think about that a lot. Timbuktu is thriving. Its libraries have grown so vast that scribes must now categorize them by color-coded string tied around each scroll. One small accident involving a curious goat and a spool of yellow thread leads to the entire astronomy section being resorted overnight. You laugh when you hear about it. The scribes do not. And your memory, already legendary, begins to wander beyond Mali's borders. Merchants in Venice barter over silk while whispering stories of the Emperor of Gold. A scholar in Constantinople writes a letter referencing your pilgrimage, though he spells your name with 5 different vowels. In Granada, an Andalusian poet pens an ode to your journey. He walked with gold, but knelt in dust. His crown bowed to a sky bigger than him. You never read it, but you would have liked it. Fringe detail? One rumor claims you built a secret vault beneath the Niger where you hid books that were too powerful for the world. Wildly untrue. You tried reading one such manuscript. It was just 300 pages on irrigation. You used it as a doorstop. Yet these legends don't bother you. They're part of the slow myth-making process. History, you've come to realize, is less about facts and more about feeling. People remember not what you did, but how you made them feel, safe, curious, seen. And that's enough. Some days young students visit you, nervous, wide-eyed, clutching questions like tightly folded letters. You listen, you answer. Sometimes you redirect them to someone younger and sharper. Other times you just offer tea and a long story that somehow circles back to their question without ever directly touching it. One boy asks, "What's the most important thing a ruler can build?" You say, "A silence where truth can speak." He nods slowly, pretending to understand. You smile. One day he will. Your architect, old, nearly blind now, visits once more. You walk together through the palace gardens, now grown wild with mango trees and soft moss. He says, "Everything we built still stands." You touch his shoulder and reply, "Not everything, but the important things, yes." One afternoon, a gift arrives from Cairo. A beautifully bound manuscript of Islamic jurisprudence, hand-delivered by a scholar who traveled 3 months to offer it in person. You host him for tea, ask about the state of learning in the Mamluk court, and share a quiet laugh about camel politics. They are always staging sit-ins. That night, you flip through the manuscript. Inside, in tiny script, there's a dedication. To the one who proved that gold could build more than walls. You close the book gently, pressing it to your chest. The griots, ever watchful, begin composing your final song. You hear snippets of it in the hallways, half-formed melodies. He brought light to the desert, taught stars to speak, and turned camels into libraries. You raise an eyebrow at that last line, but decide to let it pass. Let them exaggerate a little. You did, after all, once claim you could predict rainfall by how loudly frogs croaked before dusk. It wasn't entirely wrong, and then, quietly, a pattern emerges. You stop needing to guide. You stop needing to be seen. And Mali doesn't collapse, it adapts. Merchants still gather, teachers still teach, farmers still laugh at the rain. Your people, your dream, continues. Less golden now, perhaps, but more solid. Like polished bronze, like time-worn stone. In the evenings you find yourself drawn to the water. You sit beside the same river you first crossed on your rise to power. It gurgles and whines as it always has. Indifferent. Eternal. You toss in a mango seed and watch it bob away, a small sweet offering to a life well lived. You think, if anyone asked, you'd say this was your favorite part. Not the gold, not the grandeur, but this gentle glide into stillness. The rains come softly this year. Not the thunderous kind that carves rivers into the land, but a persistent drizzle, like the sky remembering something bittersweet. You watch it fall from your chamber window, light tapping on stone, leaves slick with memory. And beneath the rain, the world carries on. Children splash in puddles. Traders cover their goods with woven mats. Scholars joke that the water is divine punishment for spilled ink. You know better. It's renewal, quiet and necessary. You begin spending more time alone, not in sadness but in stillness. There's a sweetness in solitude now. You wander the less used parts of the palace, running your hand along walls smoothed by time, listening to echoes that only speak when no one else does. One day you open an old cedar trunk and find scrolls you wrote decades ago, musings on justice, drafts of speeches never given, even a list titled Questions I Never Answered. You add one more. Why does the weight of peace feel heavier than war? You roll it back up and return it to the trunk exactly as you found it. Outside, the trees bloom late. The gardeners say the soil is tired. You nod. So are you. But it's a good kind of tired, like a road finally walked to its end. And Mali is awake. Timbuktu's scholars now rival those in Cairo. One even dares challenge an Egyptian jurist to a debate on lunar cycles. It ends in laughter and a shared dessert of honeyed dates. No winner, just warmer friends. Your successor governs well. A little cautious, a little stiff, but fair. He doesn't try to be you. That's his greatest strength. Foreign merchants still come, now with stories of kingdoms beyond the Atlantic, and of people in the far north who live where the sun disappears. You smile politely. You've heard stranger. Here's a fringe tidbit. One explorer gifts you a small box of snow sealed tightly in a clay jar. He swears it's real. You open it, and of course it's water. Everyone laughs. You keep the jar anyway. It's now the most interesting paperweight in Timbuktu. You receive news from beyond the desert. The Mamluks are in political turmoil. A drought affects parts of Morocco. In Europe, 100 small wars tangle like vines. You read these dispatches with compassion, but no longer with urgency. Your world is here. At night, you dream more vividly, not of palaces or gold, but of small things. A child's laughter in Gao, a flute song from a Jenny market, the smell of fried millet cakes in a village you once visited in disguise. Dreams stitched from memory. And now the griots sing more often, not because you ask them to, but because the people do. They gather in market squares, under trees, even on rooftops, whispering, "Tell us again about the King of Gold." And the griots oblige. They sing of the pilgrimage, of the libraries, of the day a camel stepped on a scholar's foot and caused a 3-hour theological argument. They sing of your fairness, your laughter, your habit of eating oranges with a small spoon. Historians still argue over that one. You attend fewer public events now. Your appearances are rare, and when you do arrive, the crowds fall silent, not out of fear, but reverence. You speak little, a smile, a gesture, a single phrase. Take care of each other. That's enough. One sunset, your successor joins you on the palace roof. You sit together in silence as the sky turns copper. Finally, he asks, "How did you know what to do all those years?" You chuckle. "I didn't. I listened until something wiser answered." He doesn't fully understand. He will one day. The next morning, you gift him your old prayer mat, the one worn soft at the edges, the one that smells faintly of cedar and thyme. You say, "It's not for kneeling, it's for remembering where you've stood." Then you go to the mosque, barefoot. The floor is cool, the air carries the smell of myrrh and age. You offer your prayers slowly, savoring each syllable. You sit for a long while afterward, eyes closed, heart steady. You're not waiting for anything, just listening. The sound of Mali is different now, more layered. Trade routes no longer just carry goods. They carry ideas, accents, rhythms. You hear traces of Persia in the poetry, Andalusia in the architecture, Ghana in the gossip. Your empire has become a chorus. And your name? It's already drifting into the corners of maps, inked alongside rivers and deserts, not in bold letters, but in graceful script, like a secret only the stars truly understand. That night you write in your journal one last time. The wind carries seeds farther than we can see. I hope the future grows gardens we never imagined. You close the book. You light a small lamp. You leave the door open. The days stretch longer now, not because of the sun, but because of the way you linger inside them. Each morning you move through the palace with a sense of curiosity rather than command. The courtiers still bow, the guards still stand a little straighter when you pass, but you no longer stop to give instructions. You stop to ask questions. Small ones. What's the name of this flower? How long have you worked here? Do you think the moon ever gets tired of being stared at? You begin to measure life not by gold, but by moments. The way honey drips slower when the air is cool, the whisper of wind through silk curtains, the rhythm of a fountain your architect once insisted was too wide for subtlety. It wasn't. The people begin leaving you gifts again, not extravagant ones, but tokens. A woven bracelet from a market child, a prayer etched into a seashell, a loaf of bread shaped like the Sankor Mosque. You display them on a low wooden shelf, calling it your empire of ordinary things. And then, unexpectedly, a story reaches your ears. A boy in a distant village claims to be descended from a jinn. Not malicious, just mischievous. He tells fortunes using river pebbles and mango leaves. The villagers adore him. Some call him a prophet, others call him Little Musa. You ask to meet him. When he arrives, barefoot and beaming, he gifts you a pebble. This one means you still have a journey left, he says. You smile, though your bones disagree. Still, you thank him. He stays the night and tells stories to your court. One of them involves a talking horse and a well full of stars. No one understands it, but everyone sleeps better that night. Fringe detail? The boy insists your gold crown has a secret compartment. You humor him. Together, you find a hidden latch and nothing. Just space. You laugh for a full minute and then say, "That's where I keep my extra humility." Meanwhile, your letters continue to travel. You receive replies from places you'll never visit, caravanserais in Anatolia, schools in Damascus, merchant guilds in North Africa. One letter from a woman scholar in Fez thanks you for sponsoring her father's pilgrimage. "He returned," she writes, "but his spirit stayed in Mecca. He said the stars were different there." You nod. You remember. And as your final season approaches, you feel the empire gently shifting beneath your feet. Not collapsing, just evolving. Like a tree growing new branches as older ones grow still. You begin hosting evenings of memory. No politics, no official business, just low fires, sweet tea and stories, told not about you, but around you. Anyone can speak. Some griots recount your greatest moments. Others tell tales of fishermen and mischievous goats. One guardsman performs an impromptu play involving a stolen watermelon and 3 very confused chickens. You declare it the best performance of the decade. You invite more storytellers. You even try your hand at one, a clumsy parable involving a lion, a mirror, and a bowl of couscous. It flops. Everyone cheers anyway. And then one night, while sitting beneath the wide-open stars, you feel it. Not pain, not fear, just a loosening. As if something once tightly held has finally exhaled. You don't mention it, not yet. Instead, you rise the next morning and ask to visit your old schools, the ones in Niani, Djenné, Gao, and of course Timbuktu. You don't go as a king. You go as an elder, a guest. You listen to lectures. You nod in approval. You watch children squirm on prayer mats, doodling stars in the margins of their notebooks. In Timbuktu, you give a short speech. We do not keep knowledge. We plant it. We water it with listening, and we leave the harvest to hands we will never see. The applause is soft, reverent. You bow lower than they expect. You return to Niani quietly. There is no parade, no trumpets, just the scent of tamarind and rain on stone. You spend your next days simplifying. You give away many of your possessions, robes, books, even your writing desk. You keep only a single scroll, your letter to Mali, unread by all but you. At dusk, you take longer walks. You pause at the mosaic you had made depicting the pilgrimage. You trace the tiny figures with your finger, the camels, the desert, the crescent moon that always hung just out of reach. And one evening, you write a final note, not to the empire, but to the stars. You were my only constant. I never owned you, but I walked by your light. You roll it up, tie it with a simple reed string, and place it in a ceramic bowl. Not for burial, for memory. You've begun to suspect that's the real kingdom. Not what is built, but what is remembered kindly. And if that's true, if the stories are half as warm as the moments, you know your empire will outlive you. The mornings are gentler now, the sky a little softer, like parchment smudged with lavender and quiet intentions. Even the birds seem to chirp more slowly, as though their songs have been lulled by the rhythm of your days. You sit in the courtyard, beneath the same baobab tree that once shaded your scroll readings and mango breakfasts. But now, you mostly just watch. A leaf twirling in midair, a lizard sunbathing like it owns the stone, the shifting shadow of your old throne room. You wonder, if you hadn't become emperor, would you still have ended up here? Sitting, listening, letting the world unfold like a scroll you don't need to edit? You're not sure, but the thought makes you smile. There's something curious about these final chapters. Time no longer ticks, it stretches. Moments feel thick, like date syrup. You taste them more fully. And slowly, the empire begins to speak back to you, not in words, but in gestures. A farmer arrives from the outskirts of Gao. He brings you a bowl of dried figs. For the man who made markets possible, he says. A merchant from the salt mines sends a slab engraved with the phrase, "May your shadow always bring coolness." A group of children from the schools in Jenny send a play. They call it The Pilgrimage of the Laughing King. It involves a talking camel, a sandstorm with stage effects, and a chorus of donkeys who sing every time someone says the word gold. It's a mess. It's perfect. You attend the performance in secret, sitting at the back in a faded robe. The children don't recognize you. That's the part you enjoy most. You receive letters too, more and more. Some from scholars requesting funding, others from distant lands you barely know, praising your diplomacy, your roads, your story. One letter begins, "I do not believe in kings, but I believe in you." You reread that one often, but amid all this grace your body grows quieter. You feel it in the ache behind your knees, the way your hands tremble when holding a teacup too long, the way stairs look taller than they used to. Even the cushions feel firmer, though you know that's not true. You don't fear it. You just notice. So you do what you've always done when the world begins to shift. You prepare. You summon your heir, not in the great hall, but in the garden. No advisors, no protocol, just 2 stools beneath a tree and a shared plate of roasted nuts. You speak of small things, how to read a room, how to treat silence as a friend, how to tell when a scribe is hiding a mistake. Hint, they scratch their ear a lot. Then you say something you've never said aloud. You will not rule the same way I did, that's good. But remember, never lead with the fear of being forgotten. If you listen deeply, they will remember you with peace, not applause. He nods, tears quietly tucked in the corner of his eyes. You pretend not to notice. He pretends not to wipe them, fringe tidbit. You gift him a small rock. He looks confused. You say, "It's from the edge of the desert. I picked it up the day I first wore the crown. It reminded me to stay grounded. Now it's yours." A few days later, he carries it into council chambers. It becomes a quiet legend. Meanwhile, the empire still moves, like a caravan that never stops, even when the lead camel rests. New scholars arrive in Timbuktu. A woman from Yemen begins translating ancient Indian texts into Arabic. One student swears he's figured out how to predict eclipses using only bird migration. He's wrong. But his charts are very pretty. You fund them all. You host one last gathering, a storytelling night under the stars. Everyone comes, the griots, the scribes, the cooks, the guards, even your old camel trainer, now too stiff to kneel. You share rice, honeyed bread, and spiced tea. You ask each guest to tell a story, not about you, but about a moment they thought Mali might not make it, and how it did. The tales are humble, honest, beautiful. You don't speak until the very end, and when you do, it's brief. Stories are how we tell time without clocks. Thank you for keeping Mali on time. That night, You sleep deeply. No dreams, just warmth. In the morning, you wake to the sound of the fountain. It's still running. You smile. You sit for breakfast. A soft boiled egg, a few dates, goat's milk tea, and you write one final note in your journal. They will say I ruled with gold, but I ruled with listening. That's the richer currency. You place the journal in the library, not under royal decrees, under local wisdom. It feels right. And then, like the sun slipping into the horizon, you begin to fade. Not in pain, but in peace. You no longer need to be Mansa Musa. Now you are just Musa, and that's enough. It's early morning when you wake, and the world feels stiller than usual. The sky outside is a soft blue-gray, the kind that wraps around buildings like a shawl. Even the birds seem reluctant to interrupt the hush. You take a breath, deep and slow, as if drawing in all the calm the empire has to offer. Today you rise slowly. You know it's one of your last, but you don't announce anything. You don't summon ministers or scribes. No dramatic farewell. You've never been the kind of ruler to script your own ending. Instead, you put on your oldest robe, the one stitched long ago by your mother's hand, its sleeves frayed just enough to feel like a memory. You eat a quiet breakfast, half a fig, warm millet porridge, tea that tastes like home. You savor every bite. And then you walk. Not far, just into the inner garden. The servants instinctively stay back. They can feel something shifting, though no one says a word. You sit beneath your favorite neem tree, the one that blooms with tiny white flowers and smells like forgiveness. You tilt your face toward the sunlight, let the warmth bathe you, and you listen, not to voices, but to everything else. The rustle of leaves, the low murmur of a fountain, a child's laugh, distant but real. Even the creak of the palace roof adjusting with the temperature. It all speaks to you now, like one long lullaby sung by the empire itself. People start arriving quietly, as if summoned by instinct. A scribe with trembling hands, a palace cook with flowers still on her apron, the old camel keeper with that perpetual lean to one side. Your heir, eyes glassy but composed. They don't ask for speeches, they just are, a living room of gratitude. Someone brings a drum, someone else starts a low hum. No melody at first, just a sound like shared breath. Eventually, the griots begin a slow song. It isn't about your wealth. It isn't even about your pilgrimage. It's about a boy who listened so deeply, he turned an empire into an echo that never stopped repeating kindness. A few lines make you laugh. One makes you tear up. He built his crown from questions and ruled through softened hands. And so it goes. Soft singing, soft faces, the kind of reverence you can't command, only inspire. Your heir kneels beside you, but not in supplication. He's holding something, your journal. He's found your final note. They will say I ruled with gold, but I ruled with listening. He reads it aloud. The crowd says nothing. It's the perfect response. Fringe detail? One of the younger scribes gifts you a wooden bookmark shaped like a camel. It's poorly carved, and one of the legs is comically short, but you love it. You whisper, this is how journeys begin, on awkward legs. As the sun rises higher, your breathing slows. Not out of struggle, but because your body has begun sinking with the earth itself, unhurried, whole, and wonderfully tired. Your hand is held by someone, maybe several someones. You can't see clearly, but it doesn't matter. You feel held. One last time you hear your name, not as an emperor, not as a myth, just Musa. And then the garden fades. You become at last a part of the empire's soil. Later, the empire mourns, but not loudly. No temples collapse, no markets close. Instead, a silence settles across Mali, deep and dignified. People pause at wells and murmur a thank you. Traders place flowers at crossroads. Children ask griots to tell that story again, the one about the gold king who cried at poetry and traveled across a desert just to pray. Your heir orders no gold statues, no elaborate tomb. Instead, he declares that every school across Mali will begin each season with a story circle. Any story, any voice. But the first rule is this: you must listen first. In Timbuktu, your journal is placed on a central lectern in the library's smallest, quietest room. It becomes known as the listening chamber. Visitors sit in silence before reading it. Some never open the pages. They just sit. And across the land, wherever your name is spoken, it is done with warmth, not weight. Your empire endures, not in monuments, but in moments. It rains gently the morning after. Not a storm, just the kind of rain that feels like the sky is grieving quietly, soft, steady, unashamed. Drops slip down clay rooftops and soak the edges of date palms. The river swells just slightly, like it's holding back more than it's willing to show. The empire doesn't stop, but it pauses. A respectful kind of pause, where even the clanging of blacksmiths is muffled, where the market opens an hour late, and where the birdsong feels intentional. Your burial is not grand. It is, by your own request, simple. No golden casket, no bejeweled processions, just a wrap of fine cotton, a worn prayer mat, and the earth. You are laid to rest beneath the neem tree where you last sat, the one whose roots, you used to joke, were probably tangled with half the empire's secrets. And yet, your presence refuses to vanish, because legacy, it turns out, isn't something you leave behind. It's something you sow into others. In Niani, the farmers adjust their irrigation based on techniques funded by your engineers. In Gao, the markets expand on roads that trace the ones you paved. In Timbuktu, the scribes now debate in your old study room, arguing whether a certain obscure Persian poem refers to you or some other golden king. And Mali moves forward, not in your shadow, but in your sunlight. Your heir, now emperor, does not try to replace you. He rules as himself, humbly, with quiet strength. He doesn't wear your crown often. He says it still smells like cedar and camel sweat. People laugh. The crown is placed in the great mosque, on a high shelf where sunlight touches it every afternoon. Fringe detail? One afternoon, a girl in Jenne paints a mural of you, as a lion wearing scholar's robes, sipping tea under a starlit sky. It becomes a local favorite. Tourists ask if it's accurate. Everyone says yes. The griots now end their songs with a phrase that did not exist before you. He built silence so others could sing. In your old garden, the neem tree blossoms twice that year. They say it's never done that before. People begin to visit the site, not to weep, but to sit. Some read, some pray, some just let the wind pass over them like memory. A young boy brings his pet goat there and says, "This is where the nicest king went to sleep." And far away, in places you've never set foot, in palaces, in caravan camps, in quiet homes along trade routes, your name is whispered in bedtime stories. Musa, the king of gold, the giver of books, the ruler who made the desert bloom. Even centuries later, long after Mali's borders have shifted and new empires have risen and fallen, your name still holds. Not because of gold, not because of conquest, but because you listened, because you built a kingdom where people could breathe, because you made power feel a little more like kindness. And so you rest, not beneath marble or pyramid, but beneath stories, beneath the hearts you stirred, beneath the stars you once followed across the desert. And maybe, just maybe on quiet nights, if the wind is right and the stars are out, some dreaming child will still hear your footsteps, soft, steady, headed home. Now as the final notes of tonight's story fade into the quiet, let yourself settle just a little deeper. You've wandered across golden deserts, walked beneath the weight of a crown woven from kindness, felt the hush of libraries, the breeze of long-forgotten oases, and the gentle pulse of a world shaped not by power, but by listening. Let those soft footsteps echo in your breath now. Inhale slowly, like the sand drawing back from the river's edge. Exhale gently, like a curtain swaying in a quiet Timbuktu room. The empire of your mind is calm now. No caravans to manage, no scribes to direct. Just the rustle of neem leaves and a story well told. Know this, the world doesn't always remember the loudest names. It remembers the warmest, the ones that linger in tea steam and bedtime tales, in faded murals and desert songs. And tonight, that name is yours to carry, lightly, dreamily, with peace. So rest. Let your shoulders fall, your thoughts drift. Let the night wrap around you like silk. And may you, like the king of gold, find rest beneath stars that know your name. Sweet dreams.